Turning to page 99 in the Siddur, please. Page 99 in the prayer book. On the left-hand side in the margin, intentions for the new day. Left-hand marginal note, intentions for the new day on 99. Master of all worlds, may be your will that the light of your face be reflected in mine. May my mouth speak only what is true. May my eyes see the good in all that I meet. And may my ears be attentive to the troubles of those who address me. May I breathe the awe of you, so that I lovingly face all I meet. May the words I utter be acceptable to you, our rescuer and protector. May I breathe the awe of you. May I breathe the awe over God. How will that change us? For our breath is a shared breath. When we were born in a symbolic way, each one of us was given that initial breath of life. And that initial breath encapsulated the soul, a touch of God. And every day, hundreds of times a day, thousands of times a day, we're breathing in and out. And every time we breathe, we should be mindful that in a way we're still exercising the soul. May I breathe the awe of you. Woo! Monto, page 101. Page 101. And it's found here in the red transliteration as well. Ma tovu halecha Yaakov v'yishkerotecha Yisrael v'ani v'rov chastecha avovetecha eshtacha ve'eshtacha ve'elhecha kodshecha v'yiratecha Answer me, O God, with truth, Yishacha, a sense that you are helping me, that you are a help unto me, that I am not alone in this universe. We rise the early morning blessings on pages 103 and 104. Shabbat. Zokeh Kefufim.
Amen.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Rokah haaretz v'hamayim.
Amen.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin tzadek alver.
Amen.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, sha'asa likol tzarkim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Ozer Yisrael b'gvuro. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Oter Yisrael b'tifaro. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Anoten le'orev olam. וננו היום ובכל יום ולכן ולחסר רחמים בעיניך ונכל רואינו ותגמלנו חסדים טובים ברוך אתה אדוני גמל חסדים עמו ישראל. We are seated. On the bottom of page 105, the lower left corner, life's tensions. On page 105 on the English side, we are caught in the tension between our roles as unique beings capable of great accomplishment and the knowledge that we are mortal and that our fate is to die and disappear. Stop. The tension between our roles as unique beings capable of great accomplishment and the knowledge that we're limited and we will not have a lasting touch. So how do we mediate the tension between the grandeur that each one of us possesses, being handmade by God, bearing a soul and will and an intellect and capacity to choose, with the knowledge that throughout our lives we are limited and our lasting touch will be one of finite proportions. How do we mediate that? That's an ongoing challenge every single day. In the prayer book, this little poem has one little response, but I would say the mediation between those two elements within our lives is through doing mitzvot, by making a touch in the world every single day. The little prayer continues. Prayer is the mediation between the tension. And I will argue, yes, but also mitzvot.
On a somewhat comical note, make hay while the sun shines.
Make hay while the sun shines. Yes, sir. The gentleman farmer in the fifth row. Yes, exactly right. Thank you, Moshe Hirsch. We're on page 112, the Psalm for Shabbat. Mizmor shir liyom HaShabbat, tov lodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, lahagid b'boker chasdecha, ve'emunatcha b'leilot, alei asor, alei navel, alei higayon b'chinot. How subtle your designs. The arrogant do not understand. The fool does not comprehend this. The wicked flourish like grass, and every evildoer blossoms only to be destroyed forever. But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raised my head high, anointed it with fresh oil. As my enemies gathered against me, my gaze remained steady, for my ears listen to your ear. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon, planted in the house of Adonai. They flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming, Adonai is upright, my rock, in whom there is no flaw. Oh, nirvu b'sevo d'shenim v'anin yu, lagit yesharoi trivo atabo. The righteous flourish like the date palm. The righteous are planted in the house of God. The righteous flourish in God's courtyards, which means that righteous people have a place in God's own home. We don't need, remember the key to the city sometimes celebrities receive? We don't need a key into God's house. Our behavior welcomes us into God's house. It's not literal. It's symbolic. It's spiritual. But symbolism is powerful. For you and I to know that as we walk through our daily experience, work, obligations, community, family, and so on, to be welcomed in the experience in the context of God, in the here and the now, in the daily, is exceptional. That's what the psalm is teaching. Page 122. Baruch Shemar Hayam Baruch Hu Baruch Hoseh V'Reshit Baruch Omer V'Oseh Baruch Gozer Umekayem Baruch Mirachem al haaretz Baruch Mirachem al habriot Baruch Mishalem Safarto L'Reyav Baruch Chaylon V'Kayom L'Netzach Baruch Hodeh U'Matzil Baruch Shemo. We will celebrate you, Adonai, our God, with praise and song. We will extol, acclaim, and glorify you, honoring your name and declaring that you are our sovereign God, the singular one who gives life to the world, the sovereign who is praised and glorified forever and ever. This is your great name. Baruch atah Adonai, sovereign, celebrated with songs of praise. Yochi Chero Amim, Melech Mishmach Mupar, Adei Ad Shmo HaGadol, Baruch atah Eloi, Melech Nulol B'Tish B'Chol. On page 136, Ashrei, pardon my throat. Page 136, Ashrei, again, that first phrase, Yoshvei, dwelling in God's own house, echoing that earlier phrase, the phrase in the book, in the Psalm for Shabbat, that we are welcome. We are dwelling in God's house. And as a function of that, Ashrei, we're satisfied inside. We're happy inside. It's not happy birthday. It's a depth of contentment and satisfaction. That's Ashrei. Page 136. אשרי יושבי ביתך, עוד ילדותך סלו, אשרי יום שכוחלו, אשרי יום שבנו אלוהו, תהילה לדוד, ארומים חי המלך, ברכה שמך לעולם ועד, בכל יום אברכך, ואמרה שמך לעולם ועד, גדול אדוני לעולם ועד, ולגדולתו אין חקר, גדול ישבח מעשיך, וגבורתך יגידו, הדר כבוד הודך, ויראה נפלאותיך עשיך, ועזוז נורתך יאמרו, וגדולתך אספרנו, זכר רב טובך יביאו, וצדקתך ירננו, חנון רחום אדוני, ערך אפיים וגדול חסד, טוב אדוני לכל, רחמיו על כל מעשיו, יודוך אדוני כל מעשיך, וחסידך יברכוך, כבוד מלכותך יאמרו, וגבורתך ידברו, להודיע בפני האדם גבורותיו, וכבוד אדם מלכותו, מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור, סומך אדוני בכל הנופלים, וזוקף בכל הכתובים, הנה כל אליך יסברו, יעתה נתן להם את החלם בעיתו, פותח את ידך, ומשפיע בכל חרצון, צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו, וחסיד בכל מעשיו, קרוב אדוני לכל פוריו, לכל אשר יקרוב באמת, רצון יראל יעשה, ואת שבתם ישמע ויושיע, שומר אדוני את כל אוהביו, ואת כל השנים ישמיד, תהילת אדוני ידבר כי, יברך המסר שבשלום מועד, ואנחנו נברך יה, מעתה ועד עולם, hallelujah. On page 137. The English stanza was a little red arrow. Adonai cares for the stranger, sustains the orphan and the widow, blots the path of the wicked. Adonai shall reign forever. Your God, O Zion, from generation to generation. Praise God. Hallelujah. This is a psalm. It's a religious poem. It's of a different nature and quality than Torah. It's a religious poem. Do you know what the most repeated mitzvah in the Torah is? No, not love your neighbor as yourself. It's only once. Widows and orphans. The most repeated mitzvah in the Torah is care for the widow, the orphan, and the stranger. Most repeated. 36 different contexts scattered throughout the 5 books. Care for the widow, the orphan, and the stranger. Now that's Torah. That's law. That's mitzvah. It's directive. It's challenge. It's reminder. It's a testimony to what we're supposed to do. Psalms are religious poems. And the Psalms are saying, God does this.
At what age is the orphan considered an orphan?
Officially, I'm an orphan. In the Hebrew tradition, when you lose one parent, you're considered a yatom. We don't have to wait until we lose both parents within the Hebrew linguistic context. But that's a literal answer. When you think about the mitzvah, which is scattered in a number of places of the Torah, care for the widow, the orphan, the stranger, what does widow have in common with orphan, common with stranger? What's the issue? Aloneness. Aloneness.
nobody else to care for that person. And so whether the orphan would be a child or an early teenager or later, it doesn't matter. It's if somebody has no one else that can stand by that person as a widow, an orphan, or a stranger, which means, as we say in the Deep South, y'all not from around here, are you? And I was born in Hopper, North Carolina, so I can say that. I live in Mobile, which I love. But there are times when people say, y'all not from around here, are you? And that's introduction, and it's friendly, and it's pleasant. But then there are also times, and you and I know it, when people say, you're not from around here, which means that you don't really belong. And if you lived in the South, you know what I mean. So, widow, orphan, and stranger in the Torah is a reminder that if somebody is entirely alone, that person has no one else to back him up and back her up. And the poem here in this psalm, and it's in many psalms, is reminding us that when you and I care for the widow, the orphan, and the stranger, we're fulfilling God's own job description. This is God's job description, along with building the entire universe every single day. So humanity and morality and justice must be as much a part of the building blocks of the universe as gravity and pressure and light and dark and the laws of physics. Page 141. The top of the page. Hallelujah, hallelujah, v'kadsho, hallelujah, v'kiyazo, hallelujah, v'ratav, hallelujah, v'ravilo, hallelujah, v'tek shofar, hallelujah, v'negel v'chidor, hallelujah, v'tof v'machol, hallelujah, v'mini v'gav, hallelujah, v'tzil t'lei hallelujah, v'tzil t'lei kol Shabbat. A moment, a poem of Nishmat Kol Chai, and then a bit of silence on page 145. Nishmat Kol Chai, 145. Nishmat Kol Chai, Tevarech et Shimcha, Adonai Eloheinu. On page 147, the first red arrow. Shochenan marom v'kadosh shemo v'chadruv ranadon tzadikim Adonai leisharim תתחלל, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ובמקהלות רבבות עמך בית ישראל. להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, לרומם, להדר, לברך, להקלס, על כל דברי שטות ותשבחות דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך, ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ, כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו אלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו, שיר לשבחה, הלל וזמרה, עוז וממשלה, נצח גדולה וגבורה, תהילה ותפארת, קדושה ומלכות, ברכות והודות מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני, אל מלך ותשבחות, אל אדוני נבלות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך אלוהי העולמים. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבו, יעמוד ירחם וכופתה, וחייך ויומכון, וחייך בית ישראל, והגלה בזמן קריב, אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבו, מבורך העולם ועליון. יתברך וישתבח ויתברר וינשא, יתהדר ויתעלה בנעל שמי לקדושה, ברכו לילה מכל ברכתה ושיבתה, תשבחתה ונחמתה, דברו במו ואמרו amen. Please rise, the Baruch Hu, page 149 and 150. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMavorach. Baruch HaMavorach Elam Voed 150. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Yotzer borei choshech, oseh shalom, uborei et hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, forming light and creating darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. You're seated on page 151. Samaya, On the top of page 154, preparing for the Shema. The opening stanza of the first English paragraph. You've loved us deeply, Adonai our God, and showered us with boundless compassion. Avinu Malkeinu, for the sake of our ancestors who trusted in you, and whom you taught the laws of life, so may you be gracious to us and instruct us. Kind Creator, have compassion for us. Open our hearts so that we may understand, and with love discern, hear, and study, observe, perform, and fulfill all the teachings of your Torah with love. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah. Attach our hearts to your mitzvot. Unify our hearts to love and revere your name, so that we never lose hope. As we trust in your great, holy, awe-inspiring name, we will delight and rejoice in your deliverance. Gather the tzitzit together, reminding us we're all in this together. The bottom of page 154 on the Hebrew side. Middle of 156. Yomer Adonai Moshe Lemor, Taber, El B'nai Yisrael, Kumar Tov Alehem, V'yasu Lahem Tzitzit, Al Kanfei V'B'neim L'Dorotam, V'natnu Al Tzitzit, Al Kanaf B'Tir Techelet, V'yalachem L'Tzitzit, Uritem Otom, Uzchartem V'Kol Mitzvot Adonai, V'asitem Otam V'lo Taturu, Acharei L'Vavachem V'Acharei Einechem, Asher Atem Zonim Achareihem, L'man Tizkuru, V'asitem Kol Mitzvotai, V'yitem Kiroshim Le'Elohechem, Ani Anoechem, Asher Hotzeiti Etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Li'yot Lachem Le'Elohim, Ani Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem. On page 157 on the English side, the lower half of the page. You were always the help of our ancestors, a shield and deliverer for their descendants in every generation. You abide at the pinnacle of the universe. Your judgment and your righteousness extend to the ends of the earth. Blessed are the ones who attend to your mitzvot and place your teaching and words upon their hearts. Stop there. That's referring to us. The Siddur has a perspective that when you and I take hold of the tradition, connecting ourselves to God, and we put it in our hearts, we're blessed. Siddur, by the way, the Siddur is very opinionated. The Siddur is opinionated, as is Torah. The Siddur is opinionated to the positive. Now, when you and I take hold of all of this in the daily life outside of a Saturday morning service, something changes about who we are. And we attain a status. And that status is a status of being blessed, which in some ways reflects an aspect of the one that created everything, the one that creates everything, in some way. On page 158, the first red arrow. Tehillah le'elyon baruch hu barach Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael l'chanu shira b'simcha rabah yaruch ulam mi'chavacha u'elim Adonai mi'kavacha ne'ar ba'kodesh noratilot o-sefer shira chadasha shivchu ge'ulim l'shimcha sefat hayam yachad kulam hodu b'nechol yamro Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Sur Yisrael Kumam Yismat Yisrael U'bnei Chimecham Yodam Yisrael Go Aleinu Adonai Tzvot Shemot Kiddush Yisrael. In a moment, we begin on page 159 and 160 and 161. We have the Siddur before us, and there are those joining in at home as well, and perhaps those joining in at home might need a refresher in Hebrew. And if people are looking for the transliteration for the opening 3 pages of the Amida, the transliteration is found here in the very back, the last page, for those at home on page 466. That's the equivalent. 466 is the equivalent of 159, 160, 161, where we are entering that that telephone booth, and it's just you making that direct call to God. But because we have a minion and more next to us, in the background they're also squeezing in. But there's enough room for everybody, but it's your direct phone call. We begin aloud on 159, 116, 161, and thereafter a few moments of silence. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Bimotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Banorah El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'konei Hakol V'zocher Chaskel V'imahot U'mevi Goel Livnei Bneihem L'man Shmo Yahavav. Six melachos there located with Shiach and Mageh. Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham U'chokei Tzara Atah Gibor Le'olam Arai V'chayei Meitim Atah Rav V'Hoshia Mashiach Ruach Morid Hagashem Mechakel Chaim B'Chesed Mechayei Meitim B'Rachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim U'Matir Asurim U'Mekayem Emunato L'Shenei Afar Michamocha Bal Gevurot U'Midam Elah Melech Mechayeh U'Masmiach Yeshua V'Ne'eman Atah L'Chayot Meitim Baruch atah Adonai Mechayeh Hametim. Yekadesh et Shimcha ba'olam Keshem shemakdishim ato b'shmei marom Kach katuv hayad v'yecha V'kara zeh ozer yamar
Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh,
Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh, Adonai Tzvaot, Malach all hearts Kivado. Az Gadol, Rash Gadol, Adir B'chazak, Mashmim Kol, Mitnasim L'umat Serafim, L'umatam Baruch Yameru. Baruch Barimko, Binkom Cham Al Kenyat Tofia, V'Timol Chaleinu, Ki Mechakim Anachnu Lach, Matai Timlok B'Tzion, V'Karov Yameinu L'Olam V'En Kishon, Tikaral V'Tikarash B'Tol Yerushalayim Yircha, V'Dor V'Dor, Ol Netzach Nitzachim, V'Yeinu Tirena, Malchutecha, Kadar B'Shirei Uzecha, Al Yidei David Mashiach Tikecha.
Kadosh,
Page 167, Petty Chalet.
Yikira Shemei Rabba. Yibachar Tevi Amlich Malchushay B'chaychon Yomichan B'chayachon B'Yisrael B'Alav Zman Krivi Imaru.
Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach. V'olam Ve'olam Yivarach.
Yiparach V'yishtabach V'yipar V'yiromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitalev V'yitala Shemei Kudusha. Min Chaber Chata B'Shivata Tushbachata B'Nechamata Damiman Yom Avimaru.
Amen.
Take the Betzlo to Hongo to Honachal Yisrael Kadama V'Hondi B'Shmai Avimaru.
Amen.
Yehei Shlam Rabbi Shemai B'Chaim Moyim V'Yakal Yisrael Avimaru.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom B'Ramar V'Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Yakal Yisrael Avimaru.
Amen.
Page 168. Ein Kamocha Elohim Adonai V'ein Kamasecha Malchutecha Malchut Kol Elohim U'Memshaltecha Kol Dor V'Ador Adonai Melech Adonai Malach Adonai Baruch Le'olam Vayehi b'Saron, Vayomer Moshe, Kuma Adonai, V'yakutzu oivecha, V'yanusu misanecha, Mipanecha, Ki Mitzyon, Teitzei Torah, Ki Mitzyon, Teitzei Torah, U'Devar Adonai, V'Yerushalayim, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, V'Kedushato. Page 170. Ruler of the universe, praised be your name and your sovereignty. May you desire your people Israel forever, and may your liberated power be revealed to them in your sanctuary. Extend to us the goodness of your light, and with compassion accept our prayers. May it be your will to grant us long life and well-being. May I be counted among the righteous, and in your compassion protect me, my family, and all the people of Israel. You are the one who nourishes and sustains all life. You rule over all. You have dominion over rulers, for true sovereignty is yours. I am a servant of the Holy One, whom I revere, and whose precious Torah I revere in every time and place. Not on mortals nor on angels do I rely, but rather on the God of heaven, the God of truth, whose Torah is truth, and whose prophets are true, and who abounds in deeds of goodness and truth. It is in God that I put my trust, and it
Yisrael, L'tov u'L'chayin, V'Lishma. Amen.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Adonai, Rama, Shemo, Yachadav.
Adonai Agenu, Ve'Agevora, V'Tiferet, Ve'Hanetzach, Ve'Kavod, K'Rov Hashamayim U'Ba'aretz, K'Rov Hashamayim U'Ba'aretz, L'cha Adonai HaMamlecha, Ve'Amitaseh L'Kodesh. Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'Yishachkavu, Ve'Yishachkavu, La'Adonai Kadoshu. Adonai Eloheinu, Ve'Yishachkavu, Ve'Yishachkavu, Le'Har Kadoshu, Le'Har Kadoshu. Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. You're seated. So the turning today is Vayera, and in the Chumash we begin on page number 99. Page 99, Vayera. Reminder that last week was a jam-packed parsha named Lech Lecha, and all of Jewish history originates in Lech Lecha. Avram and Sarai are commanded by God to leave Syria, leave the culture and the family and the household that's familiar with them, and strike out. They're heading somewhere. Oklahoma, Kansas, Wisconsin, or where they go. They're going just somewhere, go that way. Not westward Ho Young Man, but southward Ho Young Man, or an old man, because he's 75 and she's 65. They make a break for the sake of developing a relationship with God. In our words, for the initiation of monotheism onto the world stage. And as time passes, all this is in last week, they're getting older and they haven't yet had a child. And Sarah, now named Sarah, has the idea of giving her handmaiden Hagar to Avram as his second wife. And the child Ishmael is born. And a little while later, Yitzchak, Isaac, is born to Sarah and Abraham. And there's that tension and their conflict. And we know what's going to happen. But anyway, so that's happening in last week's Parsha. And now here we are, and we're in page 99. And the Parsha begins with a shift up until now, this area of Torah has been focused very directly on the immediate household of Avram and Sarah, or Avram and Sarai, and Avram and Sarah. And now the focus begins to expand. The focus is no longer only on literally their home, their household, their tent, but we see that they are soon to be against the backdrop of a neighborhood. Not quite a community, but an area, a neighborhood. And I think that's very important. So with that in mind, just for a moment, I wish to turn back to one sentence on page number 70. We're going back to 99. I'll look at page number 70, please. We're on page 70. This is from the opening of last week's Torah reading. And God is speaking to Avram. God is saying, you're going to leave and move in an entirely different direction. Literally, in terms of geography, a different direction, but also mentally and emotionally and spiritually. And it's verse number 3, and I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. V'nivrechu b'cha kol mishpachas, and all the families of the world will be blessed as a result of you. You, Avram, are going to have a spiritual and a greater touch upon everyone in the earth. And that has an echo from what's going to happen a little bit later on in this week's Parsha. So now we're on page 99. Ya'alod, Sheikh ben Danaleva, Ahuva ben Shon, Pashkazado, Hayo.
What's your question? My question is whereupon is this basis of having the ability to bless? Is it based upon that one statement that I will bless whom you bless? Because it's so important. If you look at it, Abraham blessed Isaac. Isaac blessed Jacob and had a leftover for Esau.
Right.
Jacob actually blessed Pharaoh.
Yes.
And
Melchizedek blesses God.
And then, of course, there's the big scene in Deuteronomy where they're on Mount Nebo and Mount Elmo, and they're saying, blessed are those who do this and blessed are those who do that. Where do you get your sense of, and the other religions, Christianity and Islam, don't have blessing.
Well, even more so, think about the Yivarechacha, which Aharon brings forth. It's not Abraham, it's not Moshe, it's Aaron. And that blessing, the Lord bless you and keep you, watch over you, bring graces of you and peace, right? Yivarechacha, Aaron, Yisah. That's a bracha. And that's a significant bracha. And it then becomes institutionalized and it's handed down for the past 3,300 years. And people in our own day share that same bracha, that blessing. So, and I would answer, you have the authority to bless someone if you have two things. Humility, that you're standing in the presence of God, and an absolute love and earnestness. And if you have humility, that you as an individual are standing in the presence of God, and earnestness and love for the person or persons whom you're addressing, I think you're authorized to bless. So, and remember, the greatest element of blessing within Jewish life would be that the blesser is seeking God to bless the blessee. I don't have any power whatsoever to transform you. or to touch you, or to change you, or to shape you, or to leave an imprint on you. I'm just a man with as many faults as anybody else. But when I, from my spirit, call forth that God bless you with love, health, happiness, contentment, closeness, striving to do honor and to bring justice in the world, then I'm saying that there's a great power in the reality beyond this one that can be brought into this reality as a function of love and compassion and humanity and concern and connectedness and relationship. That's Jewish tradition in a nutshell. I better stop.
Well, one further comment. Laban, who's not Jewish, blessed Rebecca, but it wasn't a typical blessing, though, was it?
You mean when
May you have multiple towns and
you really bought, right?
yeah, and giant walls.
Yes, may you grow in splendor and multiplicity and lots of everything. And by the way, may your enemies run away and be empty.
Right.
Right. So,
Is that a true blessing?
It's a blessing, yeah. The father wanted to make sure his daughter would be saved. So be safe, and you be blessed, and you're going to have lots of everything.
So do idols bless?
I would say categorically no. But if, in the situation of Lavan, when he's saying goodbye to his daughter, he's never going to see Rebecca again. He's never going to see his daughter again. So, when you're saying farewell, the torrent of emotions within is literally overwhelming. So he summons everything he can and he tries to get it in the right words to say farewell to his daughter, who's going to move to another country, marry a stranger, and live far distant, far away life. So he summons the everything inside himself. And I don't grade people. That's not my job. God's in charge of grading. So, I mean, a math teacher can grade me on my test and I'll fail, and it's okay. But in grading life, God's in charge. I'm not in charge. You're not in charge of grading people. Each one of us is in charge of himself to grow as a human being in terms of how we live our lives on a daily basis. That's what we're in charge of. And when you look at yourself in the mirror, remember that phrase? What was it, right? And I said, prayer is the mediation of that tension. Where was that? Right? I said, the Siddur said, prayer is the mediation of the tension between who are we and where are we as people. I can't find it now, but that's where we're grading ourselves. And by the way, we have a holiday for that. That's Yom Kippur. We grade ourselves as if God is looking over our shoulder and making sure that we're grading ourselves accurately. And by the way, if we mess up, God's still in charge of the grading. That's it.
All right.
So here we are, first of all. Thank you. Vayera, here we are. Yep.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach, Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Ba'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'charbanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torto, Baruch Atah Adonai, Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vayera, lo v'lo v'lo mamre, v'yoshev v'tzavol l'chom v'yom, v'yisayna v'yar v'nei shlosha nashim nitzim alav, v'yar v'yaratz v'kotam mipetcho v'hel v'sham kvartza, v'yomar Adonai, inna matzati chen b'necha, al na tavor me'alavcha, yukafna vat mayim v'rachat lechem, v'yishanu tacharetz, v'kaf alechem v'sadu libchem achar tavoru, כי על כן עברתם עליו, לכן ויאמרו, כן תעשה כאשר דיברת.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah temet v'chayei olam tavtochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen. Shkoyach.
I read ahead just to say.
Okay, you read ahead? You're allowed to read ahead.
This is funny. He tells her, you're going to have a kid.
Right.
And then she laughs.
She laughs.
And then she didn't laugh.
Right.
He's like, you laughed.
Yeah, I think there's humor in the Torah. I'm sure there's humor in the Torah. So, jumping back for just a moment, we're on page 100, and it's going to be verse number 6 in a minute. So, Abraham, I'm going to say something and then I may backtrack, but I don't think Abraham knows that he's going to be in the Torah. But he's doing his behavior anyway. And it's a hot day, and he's 99 years old, gets up from the heat and runs out to see these three strangers walking somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and he brings them back into the tent, and he offers them hospitality and a cool place to calm down and refresh, and makes a meal. And that comes into Torah. So he conducts himself not for the sake of posterity and being recorded, but because it's the right thing to do. He sees people walking along in the heat of the day near Beersheba, which is desert, and he reaches out to them. Not because of getting attention, but because it's the right thing to do. Has nothing to do with putting on a yarmulke or lighting Shabbos candles or making kiddush or hamotzi or anything, no talis. He sees people in a hot day and he reaches out and gives them shelter. And that should move you as your great-great-great-great-grandfather does something because it's necessary. And that's later labeled the mitzvah of Hachnasat HaOrachim, welcoming guests. And that becomes part of our tradition within Torah. And then here it's on verse number 6, 7, 8. And Vayamaher, the word maher appears twice in this. Vayamaher, he hurries. And then verse 7, Milbakar, Rut, he runs. And then it's Mahari, he says to Sarah, hurry fast. Everything has to be moved quickly to take care of his guests, these strangers. We gotta hurry up to take care of and help other people. Secondly, Yamod, Sheikh ben Dan Alevi, Vahuva Levi. And by the way, okay, so Dan, what's the question?
He didn't keep kosher.
He didn't keep kosher.
I saw that too.
Yeah, so what? I mean,
Milk and curds.
he serves meat and he serves milk and curds and whey, right? Remember Little Miss Muffet? So Little Miss Muffet is part of Torah, of course. So now there are a couple different elements here. Number one, he's serving to the strangers. And they got to be going because he and Sarah are the only Jews in the entire universe. So number one, it doesn't matter, right? Okay, item one. Item two, has the Torah been given yet?
Yes. Abraham was...
Conceptually, we would like to think that Avraham Avinu would be observing Torah, but officially we haven't had Sinai yet, because that happens with Moses, which is going to be about 500 years later. So officially, Avraham could be off the hook for serving the non-kosher food. Officially. Side note, if you really want to be technical, and Jews love technicality, if you look very carefully in verse number 8, and he took butter and milk and meat. Which came first? Milk. And then later, a little bit later, he served the meat. And by the way, it would have taken a while to slaughter a calf, clean it up, and cook it. And he could have put the first course out first,
Like 3 hours.
Even 30 minutes, you have milk in 30 minutes, you're ready for meat. It's not a big deal here, it's not that hard. Yes, sir.
You just said that Abraham didn't have the advantage of the 613 mitzvot. Couldn't pull a book off the shelf and read, this is what I'm supposed to do. So he acted generously and greeted the strangers. Did God influence him to do that, or did he himself know what the right thing to do was, even though there were no instructions on what is right and what is wrong? Or we assume there was not any instructions on what is right and what is wrong.
That's an excellent question. I don't know the answer.
Yes.
What do you think? Did Abraham inside himself know what was the right thing to do? Remember, he's a grown-up. He is recently turned 99 years old. So he's been around the block a little bit. He's got 2 wives, 2 firstborn boys. There's household conflict. He left his dad, right? He broke away from the foreign culture of Syria. He's been settling, moving as a nomad back and forth throughout the Negev, the desert of Israel. And he's had 1 or 2 conversations with God. So does he know what the right thing to do is?
I like to think he's a psychic. No test.
Well, the Torah probably wouldn't have continued if he didn't know the right thing to do. So he's going to find out he's going to be a dad. So I guess he knew the right thing to do. And maybe God in some way influenced him to choose the correct door.
I really think that in those days, I mean, you didn't have the Jews and non-Jews and all that. The reason for the separation of the milk with the meat is not because of health reason or anything, but because to determine that you were Jewish. And not Gentile.
Well said. Well said.
Where were you? Baruch Adonai Hambarach, Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Ba'ed, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim, V'natan Lanu et Torato, Baruch Atah Adonai, V'nateinu Torah.
Amen. By my hair, Abraham Ha'olah, El Sarah, Ve'ver Mahari, Shloshim, Kemat Solet, Dushi Vaseu, God, Velbakar, Abraham, Vaikach Bakar, Rachvatov, Vaitain Elanar, Vayamaher Lasoto, Vaikach Chema Bakalav, Velbakar, Asher Savaitain Lehem, Hu Omed Alehem, Tachar Ha'et,
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam, Asher Natan Lanu Torah Tamed V'chayei Olam Natan V'tocheinu, Baruch Atah Adonai, V'nateinu Torah.
Amen. Moshe Hirsch. Yavon, Moshe Hirsch ben Shmuel Yaakov Shlishi. We're on page 101, verse number 9. And as Seth mentioned, the word laughter is the pivotal word here in this little section. Sarah laughs within herself, it's the kirbah.
inside herself. Maybe it's just a little chuckle, maybe it's under the breath, maybe it's really just an attitude of the mind, and she's laughing. She says, "You really think that we're going to have a baby?" I mean, Avram is 99 and she's 89. Right, Richard? Yeah, come on, give me a break. It's just like, that should just say it, right? And, but this is the part I don't understand. And I haven't seen the comment yet. I'm still looking. Maybe I'll manage to find something by next week. Verse number 13. And God said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh?" No. Is Abraham in charge of Sarah's laughter? Pardon me, but if God's interested in the laughter, whom should God be addressing? Sarah. How come God doesn't talk to Sarah and say, "Hey, why do you laugh?" And then it's the follow-up sentence. Where is it? And then Sarah denies it a little bit, but that's it. So I don't quite understand why there's this little in between. Ideally, God should really be talking directly to Sarah and not speaking to Abraham about this.
Abraham didn't answer.
Abraham doesn't answer.
He just stands and
So I don't, and this is the problem, folks, because we're reading now, we might call it even a script, and we don't know how the dramatists are vocalizing their words. Is it loud? Is it whispered? Is it tongue-in-cheek? We don't have any cues other than the script, the words which are recorded here. So we don't know, was this tongue-in-cheek? Is there humor? Is there sarcasm? Is there frustration? Is there anger? We don't know anything. But there's something going on here. And maybe God is talking to Avram about Sarah because God and Avram are already connected in some way. I don't know. Maybe it's because of the angels who are talking and saying, "Sarah's going to have a baby." I don't know.
But we did learn that not only does God act on the actions that you take, but He sure knows what you're thinking as well.
Yes.
So you better have good thoughts.
You better have good thoughts.
And not laugh.
And not laugh. Sarah bikba lay more achregut yetali and avarani zaken vayomer noy aram lamazet chaka Sarah more ha nam ele vanizakanti hay claim it nine davar loe ashur lach kayet khaya o Sarah ben Tatakachesh Sarah more lo zachakti kiria ver Lo Kizat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam asher nasa lanu Torah sames v'chayei olam notav v'savchenu Baruch atah Adonai noseinu Torah.
Amen.
has an asterisk and symbols above it.
What's the word? It's in love?
Yes.
Where is it then? It's my love, what is it? So, give me a second, I can't find it right now. Now, what is this? So what's interesting is that here in the printed book, which you're holding in your hands, it's verse number 9, and at the very top of that second word, Hebrew love, there are 3 dots, and then if you go down to the very bottom of the Hebrew, before you get to the English word enjoyment, the Hebrew word translated as, right? In between verse 15 and enjoyment, the Hebrew word translated as, you see in small print V9 in very tiny print with Hebrew. And it says, Nakud al Aleph Yud Vav, which means there are dots on the Aleph and the Yud and the Vav. But according to most understandings of transmitted tradition, there's no dot on the Lamed in the Torah, just Aleph, Yud, and Vav. But I need to go check it right now. I realize and I gotta make this other thing I noticed in this cloth, in this parchment. Where is it then? What are we talking about? What is it? But I realized oh, yep, they're here. Okay, we're okay. Dots are it's just they're small, I didn't see them. But they are here. They're very low. So that says that for however many centuries or millennia, that word has had those dots, and again, I don't know the laws of what's called sophros, how to write a Torah. But according to the laws of sophros writing Torah, a Torah has dots in certain spots or locations throughout itself. And why? Because.
Okay, so
who's going to change it now?
but the explanation doesn't, the explanation in Hebrew doesn't explain why they're there.
No, it just says there are dots here.
Okay.
It doesn't explain why. Correct. Is there a comment on the bottom? I didn't know. Is there a comment? What does it say? Dots. Okay. We're on page 102. Tamar, and this is the part, folks. This is the part that gets my socks going up and down. Here we go. We're on page 102. It's page 102, and it's verses 16 on. Right? And the strangers are going to be walking towards Sodom. And look at verse 17. And God said, now, to whom did God say? And the answer is, I don't think God verbalized it out loud, but God thought about it, or said it to God's own self, right? The way you and I talk to ourselves inside our heads. And God said, Hamachaseh ani, will I conceal something from Abraham, which I'm going to do? And Abraham, verse 18, is going and will be becoming, the Hebrew words in English are terrible, is going and will be becoming a goy gadol, a great nation, atzum, mighty, and blessed through all the nations of the land. Remember back in last week's Torah reading, God said, everyone's going to be blessed, he's going to be a source of blessing for all the nations of the world. It's the same wording, same idea, different wording. That last week had mishpachas, all the families of the earth. This is all the nations of the world. So there's something special that this man Abraham was going to be a source of blessing, inspiration, and spiritual motivation to everybody on the planet. And because of that nature and that quality of Abraham, should I conceal what I'm going to do? And we know we're talking about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what's going on here. So God's talking, and verse number 19, Ki dati laman asher, because I know that someday he, that's referring to Abraham, will command his children and his household that comes after him, Vishamu Derech, to observe the path of God, to do tzedek and mishpat, justice and judgment, justice. So God says Abraham is going to make it a legacy for his descendants to be a people dedicated to justice. God doesn't say, I'm going to command the people of Israel. God says, Abraham is going to command his descendants to be tzedek, tzedakah, and mishpat. And so because Abraham has it within him, communicate to his own lineage and posterity to make the world more just, I can't conceal what's going to happen to Sodom and Gomorrah. That's wow.
Is that why when you bless people, you say Mishaveh, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov?
When we're saying Mishaberach, we're blessing people. And by the way, there are about 6 or 7 different versions of the Mishaberach, and they all start with the same formula, because we're talking about what's closer than your family. What's closer than your mom, or your dad, or your relatives, or your grandparents? We all have parents and grandparents. Mishaberach, may the one who blessed your mothers and your fathers, your aunts and uncles, your grandparents and great-grandparents, also bless fill in the blank on this occasion. Bar mitzvah, wedding, illness, a move in your life, they're all in the book. They're different, but they all start the same way. Because we all know those words.
It's not because of this where God says, because Abraham is going to bless all of us.
It could be. But think about the opening of the Amida. Right? So that is the biggest thing we got, the Amida, folks. And it starts off with, remember your ancestors. Remember, you're all part of a family. And that should give you guidance and love and permanence and rootedness and knowing where we belong. That's family. Here we go. Thank you for your love. Vayikun Nisham Hashem? Yes. Okay.
Baruch Adonai Hamorav. Adonai Baruch Eloheinu Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'na'ata banu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. ויקום משם אנשים, וישקיף על פני סדום, ואברהם הלך עמם לשלחם, אמר, המכסה אני מאברהם, אשר אני עושה, ואברהם היו יהיה לגוי גדול ועצום, ונברכו בו חוגי הארץ, כי עתיד למען, אשר יצווה את בניו ואת ביתו אחריו, ושמרו דרך אדוני לעשות צדקה ומשפט למען הביא אדוני על אברהם את אשר דיבר עליו. ויאמר אדוני זעקת סדום ועמורה כי רבה וחטאתם כי חטאה מאוד ארדה נא וראה הכצעקתה הבאה אלי עשו Kila Limo Edam.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Cindy, would you like to lay out? Cindy, come on. Rivka Bat Leika. Hamon Yibaleki Le.
Yeah.
Thank you for early count today.
One more question?
One more question. Of
I can't help that.
I love it. It's a great portion, man. It's a great portion.
It says that he has heard the outcry of the sinning going on here.
Right.
And yet he also hears the outcry of the Jewish slaves in Egypt. Does he have a Facebook page, or does he listen to the newspaper or what?
So, God has bionic ears. There is something. Let's go back to the Psalms, and we look at one psalm after the Ashrei, and God cares for the widow and the orphan and the stranger and the one who's alone, the weak and distressed. That's God's job description, and it's a powerful message to say that God hears the cry coming forth from Sodom, the same way in the book of Shemot and Exodus, God hears the cry of the Israelites. So, what's the most famous Jewish prayer we have? What's the first word mean? Listen. Hear. Listen. We're supposed to listen. Now, when we say Shema Israel, we're talking individually to ourselves and all Jews simultaneously, saying that we all have to listen to each other simultaneously. And you know, Jews in a room, we talk a lot. But we're supposed to listen to each other. So, in Judaism, listening is believing. We say in English, seeing is believing. Listening is believing. And God is described as listening and hearing. And since, and this is now a later Jewish value superimposed upon an earlier time period, we're supposed to emulate God, we're supposed to listen as well. And that's probably what's going on here, because this is the very famous scene where God and Avram enter into a bargaining session. They're humbling a bissel, verstehst? So they're humbling, they're negotiating. But what's interesting is that Avram initiates the negotiation. And that should just give your heart pride beyond what we can say, that our ancestor is defined and defining himself by the fact that he's caring about strangers. And if you look here, we start in 22, but on the top of 103, it's verses 24 and 25 and 26. That's his first aliyah, and that's the beginning of the negotiation about don't destroy the people of Sodom. Well, look at this. We got to go Hebrew, folks. You got to go Hebrew. So if you look at verse 25, which is the end of this aliyah, it's an incredibly strong word. The first word is Chalila Lacha. Chalila in normal Hebrew means God forbid. So if I say, God forbid he would do such a thing, we'd say Chas v'Chalila. But I'm talking about us, right? God forbid he would, break a law or cheat on his family or squander the kid's inheritance on gambling or Chas v'Chalila, God forbid. Here, Abram is saying, you forbid you, because it's Chalila, it's the same word, but I just say God forbid to God, right? So he uses the word la, which is to you, God. So, God forbid you, God, how on earth, God, can you destroy a righteous person with wicked people? What on earth are you thinking about, God? God forbid God, you. It's amazing Hebrew. And he uses it twice in the same sentence. It's verse 25, it's Chalilallah, and then it's just before the word, after the word Kirasha, Chalilallah, Hashavit Halar. God forbid you will not treat the world justly because you're the source of justice. Surah, over and over again. Surah and Mishpat. Wow. Fantastic.
Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vayfim Shaman Nashim V'chustom V'avram L'Terovim V'roi V'ygasharom V'yomer Ha'af Tispet Tzadik Im Rasha Ulai Yesh 50 Tzadikim B'toch Ha'ir Ha'af Tispet V'lo Tisha L'makom L'man 50 Tzadikim Asher B'tva Chalil Allah V'esot Karavar Hazeh L'hamid Tzadikim Rasha Vaya Chatzadik Rasha, Chalil Allah, Hashavik Lord, Loyaseh Mishpat. Vayomer Adonai, Imem Sadistam, 50 Tzadikim Lovir, V'nasadi L'chol HaMakom, Ba'avoram.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Et Torato. Torah Temet V'Hayei Olam Natan Ketat B'tochenu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. For Moshe? Ja, for Moshe, Aaron Yaakov Sarach Elde. Shishi. And the passage continues on, it's verses 26, 7, 8. Onto the next stage of the handling. Handling is the Yiddish word for bargaining. Here it is, Bayan. We are, it's Bayan, it's verse number 27 on page 103.
Baruch Adonai Baruch
Baruch Adonai
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torah Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vayanam vayomar hinina what ledaber lamnoi v'nochi afar ve'efer ulai yaksuron 50 tzadikim 5 hatashit ב5 et kol ha'ir vayomer lo ashtit im emtza sham 45 v'yosefo ledaber elav vayomer ulai Yimotun Sham Arbaim, Vayomer Lo Esubavur Harbaim, Vayomer Alma Yichar Ladoni, Vadabera Ula, Yimotun Sham Shloshim, Vayomer Lo Ese Imotza Shloshim.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Natan Lanu Torah Temet B'chayei Olam Natan B'Eloheinu Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Miriam Jacqueline. Yamad Moshe Ben Yonah. What's your mother's name?
My mother's name is
Chana? Chana. Yamad Moshe Ben Yonah. Chana Leshmi. I think it's verse 30.
Baruch Adonai Hara. Baruch Adonai Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Ba'olam. Asher baka banu mikami v'natan Torto. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Torah.
Amen. Sham Shoshim, Bayom, Hino, to the Belanoi, Ulaim Sham Esrim, Bayom, Loshiva, Burasrim, Bayom, Allah, Yicharni, Batabera, Ahapam, Ulaim Shamasara, Favorite Loa Shiva, Burasara, Bayelachano, Kashikila, the Bear Abraham, Fabram, Shalom.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Ba'olam. Asher natan Torah Tevet v'chayin lo b'tzavot. So Kenu, Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Torah.
Amen. Yikadol, Yikadash Shemei Lava. Shemei ben Sharu, Lelam Gavachata Vashirata, Kush Vechata, Vechemata, Ta'ahira Yama, Vimera. As Dan mentioned before, we say Mishaberach, a prayer of healing for our loved ones. And we attach it to the end of the Torah reading. And if you know someone and you wish to include that person's name, please mention that person's name aloud during this list of names. Mishi Berchoteno Avos within Sorov Gorachalea, record of Kolin as the Kalel Et. Adam Lefcourt, Yinta Gisha, Abamud ben Gisha, Chanasar Peshalea, Elalea Bataviva, Claudia Thomas, Dov Shlomo Betovanacha, Nabrulit Batoliza, Kania Hayabatari Menu, Taptako, Spencer Babashi, Yudah and Sari Mania, Jonathan Mathis, Wendy Fassman, Yoshua Betzoda, George Patinos, Chaya Esther Batachama, Yaakov Aroma Chayachana, Daniel Galvin and Sari Mania, Rivka Bachashim Lishna, Yusuf Laverne, Shmuel Shimon Ben Eliyahu, Yaakov and Leora, Billy Singleton, Linda Batmina, Laura Barron, Naomi Bat Elisheva.
Laura McCandle.
Every other.
The Colossians agree and Nehera, Hashman of our Amen. Almighty God, bring forth quickly the healing of our loved ones. For all those whose names are called forth, next to your holy Torah, call forth with love and concern. Hear these words and bring forth your compassion, your gentle power of healing, your presence, your closeness. Lift up all those who are ill, those who are brought low, those who are suffering, the loved ones of those who are afflicted. Strengthen them. stabilize them. Let there be an awareness that each and every person is cherished in the eyes of the greater universe. Bring forth healing, and above all, bring peace. And we all say, Amen. Just do a quick bump here, Dad. Quick bump.
Yeah, I'm old enough, but I'll find the time I'm not there.
So it's just the last three sentences. These are so jam-packed. Language on Shama Street. Okay, see. Baruch et Adonai Baruch. Baruch and Baruch Olam Baruch et Vermenen aan wat de beer, like Ula Imatun Sham, Esri, Vimer, Loish, Heat, Balboor, Esri, Vayomer. Allah, Yikar, Nagar, Vimer, Aham, Ula Imatun Sham, Asara, Vimer, Loish, Heat, Balboor, Asara, Via Karoi, Kashikila, the bear, Ram, Baruch Shavim, Komo. Baruch Atom, Elohim, Mohammed, Shinet, Rise for the Hagba and Lila Gadiel. You come for the Hagba, please. Tomorrow, you like to Lila, please. Thank you. Rise. We're going to see it for just a moment or two. We just saw the presentation of Abraham to the world. And the qualifications for being an ancestor is being a person who cares for other people, not knowing who they are, not seeking kudos or achievements, but just caring. And this is echoed in an element that happened also in last week's Torah reading. There is a battle near Sodom and Amorah, and some people are taken as captive, and there are spoils of war taken in this battle. And Avram pursues the bad guys who kidnapped people, we would say human trafficking, and he grabs the people and he brings their wealth back, they and them and themselves, and he returns them to their homes. And the king says, here, you have anything you want from all the recaptured spoils of war. And he says, no, just don't charge me for the food that I ate while I was on the way. Because I reached into the jug wagon, okay, but don't charge me for the food. And that's the last week's Torah reading. And here we have this man who's objecting to the distress and the suffering in Sodom. So this is why you and I are Jews, because it's woven into our DNA to care for somebody who doesn't have somebody else to care about him or her. That's in our Jewish DNA. Cindy.
Rabbi, Ireland was there like a group attack, and how do they break down the door? Isn't it a tent or in the house already?
I didn't hear your question.
What happened? Did this group kind of attack them? And I didn't know they were houses. I thought they were tents.
In last week's Torah reading?
No, right here.
Well, there are tents, doors. I'm not exactly sure. It seems door. I mean, the word seems door. Yes, it seems door. Yes, in Sidon.
What says Lod is a townsperson?
And it's at a threshold. So you have thresholds at tents? I guess you have a threshold at a tent.
Is this a group like a tent to raid or what?
This is in Sidon, you mean?
Yeah.
I suppose there are people living in the city. I mean, Sidon and Amorah just are those two towns.
No, I mean, what they did, and they didn't have a house.
Abram's household was a tent. Abram's house is a tent, and Abraham sees these strangers and he brings them into his tent. You're looking puzzled, Sid. I'm not quite sure what your question is. Let's discuss this at lunchtime, okay? Let's move on. Thank you. Because I want to talk about the Haftorah for just a moment, and I know what time it is. So let's go to page 124 in the Chumash. And if you remember the name Elijah, you know that Elijah had an assistant. After Elijah disappeared, Elisha took over. So this is time period in the 800s BCE. So rough numbers, 1,000 years after Abraham. 1,000 years after Abraham. And this is a very long Haftorah, so I'm just going to summarize quickly. It's the lower stanza on 124 onto 125. There's an elderly woman. She sees this traveling Israelite prophet, has no place to live, and she fixes up a little room for him, and that way he doesn't just camp out somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And he comes to her and asks, is there anything I can do for you to repay your hospitality? She says, no, I'm okay. And he says, you know what? I know that you're old and your husband's old. You're going to have a baby. And you should say, aha, this sounds a lot like the Torah reading, which is why we're reading it now. This is the summary. And so you have a baby, time goes by, and unfortunately the child gets sick and dies. And so here we are, we're on page 125. And it's verse number 19, 21, 22. The baby gets sick and the baby dies, the child dies. And look at verse 22. The woman called her husband, please send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys. I'm going to go to the man of God. I'm going to hurry back to the man of God. In her mind, if he's the one who made her initially have a baby, then she can, the man of God, Elisha, can make a miracle and bring the baby back. That's her logic. Look what the man says. And I mentioned this about 2-3 weeks ago when there was some question. Verse 23. But her husband, who just had a baby die, said, why are you going to him today? It's not Rosh Chodesh and it's not Shabbos. Translation, that at the time period of Elisha, it would have been customary for average Jews to make a pilgrimage to a local prophet for Shabbos or Rosh Chodesh, for whatever they did. I don't know if they said Hamul Lechem and Aretz, and then they said, you know, let's chow down, whatever. There is something that they did on Rosh Chodesh and Shabbos, but this is not Rosh Chodesh, it's not Shabbos, and therefore the husband doesn't know why she's going to the man of God. Interesting. Okay? And then she said, it's all right. And by the way, the Hebrew is shalom, which means goodbye. I'm leaving. I'm going to go to the man of God. And then so husband's at home and the wife is on the way. Who said there's not humor in the Bible? I love it. I really love it. So, and now we're on page 126. And jump down to verse number 32, and Elisha knows about the baby, the child, and Elisha comes, and you and I might read this as, oh, this is like CPR. Maybe the child is just semi-comatose, who knows what. But I'm not worried about that. Instead, I'm focusing on how Elisha responds to a woman in crisis. He is a leader. He's a prophet. He's got a touch of religious authority, you might say. And instead of saying, sorry, child's dead, oh well, he responds to a grieving mother in crisis, and he reaches out to her in the best way possible, and either miraculously or happenstance, the child is revived, and things are okay.
Maybe
So,
the child wasn't even dead to begin. The child wasn't dead.
well, maybe the child wasn't dead. Now, look, don't read this from the point of view of a first-year med student and in an anatomy physiology class. Don't read it that way. That's not the goal. The goal of this is to remind us that in our own ways as individuals, whether it's a neighbor of Abraham or Sarah, or a neighbor of this woman or Elisha or so on, you and I have the power of touching people in their lives, emotionally and spiritually, in times of good and in times of bad. And when we do that, in a way, we are standing next to God. We're bringing the touch of God. You and I are not God, but we can offer compassion and celebration, love, support, our presence. That's the purpose of this October. Now you studied a little bit about Kings, and you see the similarity between one episode in Kings and the episode in Bereshit. We turn in the Siddur to page 177. Please rise, page 177 in the Siddur. And this is Veterans Day weekend, and we're mindful of our people in the armed services who have safeguarded us at the peril of their own lives. They put themselves in harm's way, that we, as a nation, as individuals, as households, can be safe and secure. The lower two stanzas on the left margin on 177. Creator and protector of all, watch over our armed forces and all those entrusted with our safety as they daily put their lives at risk to protect us and our freedoms. Be with them in times of danger. Give them courage to act with honor and dignity, as well as insight to do what is right in your eyes. Fill us all with the gifts of love and courage, that we may create a world that reflects your glory. May we each respond to the charge of the prophet. For what does Adonai demand of you, but to act justly, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? May the one who brings peace on high bring peace and prosperity to our world, and keep us in safety, and let us say, Amen. The top of 178, the first line in Hebrew, followed by the English paragraph. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim, Tzur Yisrael Le'olam, Borech et Medinat Yisrael, Bereshit Tzmichat Geulateinu. Avinu Shabbat Shamayim, stronghold and redeemer of the people of Israel. Bless the state of Israel, the beginning of our redemption. Shield it with your love. Spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them. Crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace, and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say, Amen. on page 184. Please remain standing. We turn to page 205 for Elaine. And on this Shabbat, we remember with great love Max Roster, Milton Eichel, Annie Yanowitz Mazel, Bernice Gerwich, Helen M. Marshall McCall, Helen M. Marshall McCall, Gertrude Collette, Samuel Camille, Charles Mitchell, Rose Stein Malkov, Samuel Lappin, Abraham Goldstein, Harry Briskman, Walter Sherman, Ruth Cohen, Jacob Gutlow, Joyce Grodnick, Sharon Milak, Teresa Gutel, Alice Dahl, Abraham Harry Berger, Harry Rubin, Sarah Layden, Joseph Witzer, Bertie Maltove. Are there any other names to mention today? Perhaps those joining at home have a name to share as well. On page 207. Yitgadol v'yitgadash shmei Rabo, Amen. Be'olah divarach Yerutei, v'yamliv malchutei, v'chayei chon u'yomei chon, u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agalah u'v'zman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabo mevarach, la'olam v'l'omei olmayah. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitporar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shnei v'kudishav v'richu le'elav mikol v'irchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechanata da'amirat v'allah v'yibaru. Amen. Yehei shlama ra'al min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom ramav u'yaseh shalom aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. When we began to say Morish Kaddish centuries ago, it was placed here, we would say at the end of the service. And in a minute we'll have a couple of announcements and the Adon Olam, and then we'll conclude. But in effect, this was just about the last prayer of the service. So when people are about to walk out the door, they're going to say goodbye, unless they're staying for, let's say, a meal. And I don't know if they did that 1800 years ago or 15th century. I have no idea. But if you're about to walk out the door and the last words on your lips are Kaddish, and you see people near you who are standing up, then it stands to reason that people are going to go up to each other and say, I notice you're saying Kaddish. You okay? So the geography, the positioning of having Kaddish at this point in the service is a call for us to reach out and to show caring. In the daily touch of life, how do you and I bring little acts of caring into the world, one person at a time? So we follow the lead because I think the purpose of the Kaddish is to show that we care about each other. When we go out into the world, we'll have a notch, but as we greet each other, as we say goodbye, maybe pay attention to each other and maybe say, we're caring for you. Tonight, Zoom Hardal is on at 7. Tomorrow morning, as you know, at noon, we're gathering at the Temple Cemetery, the front gate, and we're going to have a brief gathering honoring our veterans. And we are grateful beyond words for all those who have served, and there will be some who will be stepping forward and just mentioning their names. There will be a flag. Presuming we'll say the pledge. And then afterwards, we'll have a chance to visit graves of veterans both at the Shul Cemetery and the Temple Cemetery and place flags upon their graves. On this weekend of Veterans Day, we must remind ourselves of the very great debt that we all owe. All right, let's pay attention to our veterans, living and deceased. We hope people will show up for this little gathering tomorrow at noon at the Temple Cemetery. As I said, afterwards we'll go to the Shul Cemetery and place flags upon the graves of our veterans.
I don't know where the cemetery is.
I'll get you directions. Thank you, absolutely. I'll get you directions. Reminder, next Friday night is Guitar Shabbat. Yehuda will be on the Bima, rocking out, and there'll be no meeting afterwards. That's the next Friday, normal time, 6 to 7. And we'll conclude with the Adon Olam on page 211. Adon Olam Asher Malach Terem Kol Yetzir Nivra Li'en Asa V'Chetza Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Azai Melech Shemo Nikra V'Yacharei Kimot HaKol V'Ado Yimot Nora V'Hu Hayam V'Hu Hodeh V'Hu Yiyeh V'Tiv Ara V'Hu Yiyeh V'Tiv Ara V'Hu Echad V'Yin Sheni L'Ham Shelo L'Havira V'Li Reshit V'Li Tachlit V'Lo Ha'oz V'Ha'Misra V'Lo Ha'oz V'Ha'Misra V'Hu Eli V'Chai Go'ali V'Shur Chevli V'Yei Tzara V'Hu Nisbi Yomanosli Menat Kosi V'Yom Ekra Menat Kosi V'Yom Ekra V'Yado Afiruchi V'Ei Tishan V'Yaira V'Iruchi V'Yati Adonai Li V'Lo Ira Adonai Li V'Lo Ira Shabbos. Thank you for joining again. We're looking forward to seeing you in person. Hopefully, if you live locally, you'll join us at the Temple Cemetery tomorrow at noon. And please know always that you're very important to us. You make us, and we love you.